Make a habit of empathy, to recognize ourselves in each other.
This one happened to me years and years ago. I used to be a real intense student of the teachings of Krishnamurti, J. Krishnamurti. And he would say a lot of things that were pretty radical and profound, and they sounded intriguing, but I didn't feel like I quite got what they meant. And one of the things he said that made good sense to me conceptually, but I didn't really get it, was he would say, it's not my pain and your pain, my suffering, your suffering. It's not my fear, your fear, my shame, your fear. It's the human experience. That pain is pain, suffering is suffering. It doesn't belong to a person, and it's the same suffering. That's paraphrased, but that's kind of what I heard, and I always kind of pondered that. And after many, many years of studying with him, then I fast forward, say, another 10 years. This all started probably 35 years ago. I went to a workshop in Washington, D.C., which was about a 10-hour drive from where I lived in North Carolina. And it was a workshop with Stephen Levine on embracing, I think it was called Sacred Emptiness. Well, I had read Stephen Levine a fair amount and really liked what he said, felt like I understood what he said. I even sometimes would think in the same language that he spoke. I would even teach some of the things he taught. So I had this sense of he and I were on the same lineage. But he seemed to be my elder brother on that lineage. He'd been there longer, done it, taken it further. So I was really interested in going to this conference, this workshop, in order to see what that lineage where it would lead me if I stayed on it. And so if he's my elder brother, I want to go see how he's doing. You know, how has he really embodied that, and kind of where does it lead? So I went there, not so much to hear what he said, because I already knew what he said and said it myself, but to watch and feel what I considered an elder brother on the same lineage, of the same lineage. So when I got there, the place was huge. It was crowded. It was like probably over 500 people there. It looked like every seat was taken, and people were standing in the aisles, and I was far away from him. And I was really disappointed. I mean, they had his face on a monitor, and I thought, you know, I didn't come here to hear what he had to say. I came to be right there with him and really kind of get a sense of who he was and how he had integrated this work. So I was disappointed, but he started doing this meditation, which took a while. And so I got down on the aisle, and we did this thing for a little while, and then finally the meditation was over. And I got up, and then, you know, you could hear around the crowd shuffling and sniffing and opening and closing of pocketbooks and stuff, that kind of after the prayer shuffle. So I walked to the front of the room looking for a place to sit, still feeling disappointed that, you know, I came all this way and I'm going to be far away. And then I looked around this entire hotel banquet room, and I saw one empty chair, and it was the center chair, front row, probably 15 feet from where he was sitting. So I walk up there, and kind of politely I say to this woman, is that seat saved? And she looks at me and says, yes, for you. So you're right, okay. But nobody was there, so I sat. At that point, Stephen began to talk. And now I tune into observation mode, and I'm watching his breathing pattern. I'm trying to get a feel for his energy, his inflection, everything about him, how his body moves, really, only secondarily listening to his words, but really watching him closely. And then before I knew, it was time for the morning break. It started at 9, it was now 10:30. And I kind of came out of that, and then I realized that I felt like I had invaded his privacy. I've watched him so closely, so intimately, that I maybe didn't have a right to do that. And I felt like I needed to apologize to him. So I crawled up on stage. He's sitting there. And I looked at him and I said, I need to tell you something. And I told him all about the lineage thing and how I didn't really come to listen to his words, but to be with him and kind of read him. And I had been so closely observing him that I felt like I owed him an apology because maybe I had invaded his privacy. What he said to me is the whole point of this. He looked at me and he's still sitting. He kind of puts his hand on my shoulder and he looks at me and he says, "There is no privacy." And for me, it was like all the teaching of Krishnamurti that it's like click, 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 click. There really is one core human experience, and we are all in it. And he got it, and there was no privacy invaded. If at some level his experience is my experience, is all of humanity's experience, where's the privacy? And for me, it's kind of like the jig's up. The difference isn't there. And that's what I took back, and it's something I've continued to revisit and grow from and learn from for years. Now when I'm with a client or anybody else, it's like, in my mind, the jig's up. There's the embarrassment, the shame, the fear, the anger, the sadness, it's mine too. That was that experience.
Mm-hmm. And the empathy was you were trying to empathize with him, and you were kind of trying to get into...
Well, I wasn't trying to be empathetic. I felt like I was intruding. I was trying to read him so that I would know what he is like, imagining that I might be there at some point. So I wasn't thinking about having empathy. His response to me took me to a place of empathy. It's like, oh, if there is no privacy, that means there is no barrier of this experience. Then to me, that is the basis of empathy, is to know that and to be with someone knowing that. That's what it did for me.
Yeah, I've had that same sense of invading somebody's privacy, and so that's very meaningful to see it that way, to have that realization. But it's like when you were looking at him initially, that's actually how people learn, is by... It seemed to me that was like empathy. It was like you were there to empathize with him at a physical level, into your being, right? It's like that's how I understand empathy. Is that
I may have inadvertently been doing that, but I wouldn't give myself credit for having thought that that's what I was doing. I was just wanting to, I wasn't thinking of this as an empathy project.
I see.
I was wanting to just look at somebody that I thought was on the same path, but is a little further down that same path. So it's interesting that you say that, as that's how people get to empathy.
That is empathy. Was that so?